What's up, everybody? My name is Ricky, raised in Pico, born in East LA, and this is my story. My name is Ricky. I'm the child of cholos from East LA. Um, I started going to church when I was 15. At the same time, I started coming to terms with my sexuality. And when you are living in that kind of life, the stress and the pain of like hiding that version of yourself, it's always like a panic. And you're always told, God loves the woman who had her children taken away. God loves the drug addict that OD'd. God loves the murderer. But for some reason, when it came to homosexuals, it was like, that's just the worst. And when you worship God, you're banging on the forehead of the devil and his faggot boyfriend, and everyone would cheer. And it became really clear to me like God hated me. Um, so I spent a lot of my youth and early 20s trying to kill that version of myself. And eventually led me to like a 5150 a few times. I started going to therapy and learning about like what internalized homophobia is. Um, and it's been like an interesting journey trying to reclaim and like reconcile that part of myself because growing up, you always love God and you want to be like a good soldier. So I had to make amends with him and kind of tell him like, hey, we got to be cool. Like, I'm your son. So my whole life right now is kind of just trying to explain what I've had to learn about myself, the sexuality, my past of it all, religion, and more importantly, just relationships with people. When you're raised in an environment where your dad had to be silent for so long, it's hard to get certain approvals from him, certain I love yous, and you have to learn like it's not anything wrong with you. It's just this is the way this man had to survive. And you also learn, your mom had a rough childhood, and that's why a lot of things were pressed onto you. Um, so in my healing, I have to also look at my parents and just kind of hug them and hug their inner child and be like, hey, that stuff that happened to you when you guys were kids, I'm sorry it happened, but we got to grow now because you can't keep getting triggered and taking it out on us and vice versa. Um, so it's been kind of interesting this like last couple of years and healing and going through all these like different breakthroughs and um, sometimes it's overwhelming, but when I go to bed at night and I can sleep easy, it feels good to wake up and be like, this is who I am and this is what I believe. And it's interesting talking to other people who have that silence to them. I have a food stand that's called Spread'em. We sell prison ramen. Um, and that meal, it comes from the darkest of the struggles. Like the person and people that make that meal, that's kind of what they look forward to in jail. I'm starting to realize from a lot of stories they tell me that they look forward to like this meal that they're gonna feed like their Sally or they're gonna feed like their block. And when they tell me these stories, I just think like this meal came to me when I was trying to kill myself. My friend said, here's an idea I have and I want you to do it with me. And I said, okay. And in my darkness, I found Spread'em, and in their darkness, they found the spread. And it's really weird to see these two worlds kind of connect because I don't have any correlation to jail except my dad's jail time, my uncle's. But it's really interesting to see these like grown men just open up about their experience. And I feel really honored in a way to listen because I don't think when they tell their stories of what it was like in there, they always talk about the hardships, about, the pain of it, the loneliness. But when they talk about spread, it's like that was their light. That was that one thing that kind of kept them um, kind of sane in the craziness. So I started doing that with my dad as well. Like I would sit down with him and be like, hey, dad, what was it like? And why did you choose this? And what did it feel like when you went to jail? And were you scared? And what did that kid feel like? And to hear my dad kind of talk to me about emotion, I'm like, oh, you're a little chillon, just like me. Like, okay, now I get why I'm a crybaby. I thought it was just my mom, but no, it's you too. And to see my dad kind of heal like that, just to cry and really show love to me. It's like, wow, this was there when I was little. You just were too still like in the game to like let emotions out. Um, the question that I kind of get asked a lot, because I have such a stronghold to like religion, is like what it was like going to church. And when I was going to church, it was the 2008, like 2005. So you have the mortgage crisis, you have gay marriage being a thing in legislation. So you have, and there's a war going on. There's the Iraq war. So a lot of people's children were in that war, and the pastor kind of used that as like motivation. So we would have a lot of like war. Our spirits are at war. It's a war. The devil's coming for your kids and this homosexual marriage. You know, the devil's coming for your finances. So give it to the church and tithe. It's smarter. And it was really hard to be there and watch people give up their like mortgage for tithing when the pastor knew this. You know, they pray for their homes to be saved. They pray for their children. And I remember my mom was always like, so do you like girls? Like, what, do you have a girlfriend? And I'll be like, no, mom, no girl likes me. And she read my yearbook, and everybody was like, oh, to the best fag in class. Oh, my favorite gay guy. And she was like, you know, why do people think you're gay? And I was like, well, hate to tell you, mom, but I am. Like, you know, my mom used to dress me up for like talent shows. I used to wear like wigs, and she would make me outfits, and I would be like Michael Jackson or Cher. My first concert was actually Cher. So when she was like, you're gay. And I think like what I didn't understand then, and it's hard to have this when you're that young, but the idea of mourning, like my mom had to mourn the idea of like me marrying a woman and having children, and the tree keep giving more and more fruit. And when you're that young and you don't understand it, you see her silence and you see almost her like rejection of it, because mourning is in 7 stages. You have to accept something, but before you accept it, you do try to fight it. You want to bargain. Well, what if you're not gay yet? What if it's just a phase? What if it's this, you know? And so it's just like you have to give into it. And depending on certain situations, those stages go months, years, weeks, days. So being that young and not understanding that my mom's silence was her trying to accept it, I took it as like she hates me. And, you know, my dad would come into my room sometimes and be like, you know, your mom says this about you, and I don't believe it, because that's just the way you've always been. You've always had more girlfriends than guy friends, and it's just who you are. And so now at 15, you have that, oh, fuck, my parents hate me. Oh, fuck, God hates me. And now my dad's coming to me and telling me that I'm not. So you start this war within yourself. And eventually you just try to suffocate it. And me and my friends would always have these like nights where I'll be like, how do I look? Do I look more like, if I was bi, would I look more like 80% into women and 20%, we call it like 80-20 nights. And my friends would be like, yeah, you look like a straight dude. And so like I'm right there with like my Anchor Blue all tight and just like, okay, cool. But I really for a long time tried to kill that part of myself. Like I just didn't want to be gay. And then you started doing things in private and doing things in secret, because who do you talk to? There's no like older person that you can trust that's going to give you gay advice. So you go out and search for it. And at that time there's Craigslist, there's all these like, you know, gay sites, and you just go on there and you're just like looking for friends, looking for something. And the predators can find you, and they can find that weakness, and they make you feel like you're empowered almost. Like, oh man, you're young, you're gay, and you look like this. Like, come on, look at you. Like, let's do stuff. And then you're scared and you don't know. But even back then, there wasn't a lot of, like, it was before Glee. So there wasn't a positive idea of gay. Every gay person in the movie had AIDS. Every gay person in the movie was in love with a straight guy, or they got killed at the end, or their hearts were broken. Like, there wasn't a happy ending for us. So I didn't really understand that, like, there was more than just what I was doing. And, you know, when you let enough people take pieces of you, you have nothing left of yourself. And you try to fill it and find out what it is. And so I did turn to drugs, and I turned to people as an addiction. And I started realizing that I was so, if I met someone brand new who didn't know anything about me, I can kind of like, hey, what's up? I'm Ricky. I think I like girls. You want to go to a strip club? You want, like, just trying to get a male friend, because I didn't know how to properly do it. Everything was like transactional with me. Um, and when I was 25, I got a job at a gay club, at a gay sex club. And at first I got the job because I thought like, cool, I can finally just be myself. But I didn't understand like what it meant to be myself. So working there, you start discovering things. You start learning about the history of gay culture, of gay men, and how we used to always hide, how we always used to have codes. Oh, do you know Dorothy? Like Judy Garland's character in The Wizard of Oz. And if you said yes, then you knew you were gay. You were a friend of Dorothy. You know, I started learning about the gay rights. I started learning about our history and how we had to hide and how we had to fight to just be seen. And, you know, it was so liberating to understand like this tortured history of being gay because A, you're homosexual. The only reason you're called gay is because you're miserable and you're sad. So back in the day, be like, oh yeah, that's Patrick. He's gay. And eventually that became like, well, you're gay. You like dudes. But it had like a whole different meaning back then. And, you know, I started learning that like these stories that the older generation didn't get to tell, like there's a whole generation of gay men that are dead because of this virus. You know, there's books that were never written. There's music that was never made. There's teachers that were never like given the chance. And I felt like working at that place, I carried a lot of their burden. And I was like, I got to let people know about them. I got to let people know about this man who married a woman and had to stay silent for 60, 70 years until she died. And now he can finally kind of live his truth. And I remember thinking like, I don't want to be like that. I want to be who I am. Like I want to experiment. I want to try these things out. So I started doing drag and that was fun. I started doing stand-up comedy as my drag character because it's easier to have that shield to be in front of the crowd. They're already laughing at you because you're like this 6'7" Mick Foley looking bitch. And you're right there like, yeah, so like I have a dick. And they're like, ha 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 ha. It's just like, cool, I got one joke in. But eventually, like, that part that I was trying to kill and this part that I was creating, they met. And it made me feel disgusting and it made me feel gross. And it made me think, like, my parents probably won't come see me in drag. My parents probably won't ever see me love another man. I don't know if I could do that. My parents will never walk me down the aisle or give me away. Or maybe they won't even accept the children that I adopt. And that starts running through your head because it's that part of you that was killed and it's rotting inside of you. And I had to like exercise it. And so I started doing more drugs and eventually, you know, it led me to a 5150. I was like looking for help. I remember I was driving, I had a big ass Tahoe. I was doing like 90 down Rosemead. It became Lakewood. And I called 911 and I was like, something's happening to me and I don't know what it is. And it's scaring me. And the lady was like, okay, pull over. We're going to send help. Well, the problem too is that when you're a 6 foot, 200 pound bald Mexican and you're freaking out, it looks kind of like you're on something. So it was September 1st, 2017. It was like 100 and something degrees and they pull me out of my car and they have me on like the asphalt with knees on my back. And they're like, where are the drugs? What do you have on you? What are you on? What are you taking? And I was like, I just need help. And I'm crying and I'm shaking and I'm handcuffed. And I remember thinking like, so this is what happens when you call for help. Like, fuck this system. And, you know, I did a few stays in mental hospitals and it's really intense. And it's something that it can help you understand what's happening, but it's not going to give you the answer right away. So while you're in there and they're just drugging you, because like I said, I'm 200 pounds. So at any moment, maybe I could freak out. Maybe I could hurt a nurse. And they're just giving you downers and downers and downers. And then you're released into the wild, all like dazed. You know, I started doing therapies and therapies were like, oh, this is the problem. Oh, this is the problem. And again, I would go back to a 5150 and then get released again. Oh, this is the problem. This is the problem. Like, no, it's something else. It's something else. And I remember I found this flyer for, it's called SoCal Club off of like Broadway in Manchester, but they're part of the LGBT center. They're mostly for like brown and black youth. And they offered free therapy. And I sat there with the therapist and I told him everything. And he was like, you have what's called internalized homophobia. You hate that part of yourself so much that you can't accept it. He's like, you're gay, but you're not like that gay, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm not that gay. He's like, but you're gay. He's like, a lot of Mexicans have it when they're born here versus the Mexicans that come over here and they say, oh, I'm Mexican, but I'm not a wetback. He's like, that's what you're doing. You're saying you're gay, but you're not like that gay. And he helped me understand a lot of these things that were like, no one else understood because they weren't a gay brown male. And those resources, had I not found them, I don't think I would be like here, because you find common ground, you find your community, and you're just like, oh my God, there's this thing that's happening to my culture. And I see it in my cousins, and I see it in kids on the street. And, you know, you're always in a room where you're watching something and like the uncle is always like, ah, chingada, pinche, you know, maricon. And it's like, don't say that. Like, it's okay if he's having emotions. It's okay that he's crying. Like, quit being a dick, you know? And they drink their Modelos and they just fucking like keep talking shit to the aunt. And it's like, God, this fucking cycle needs to stop. And I feel funny. Like, I talk to my friends who have kids now, and the way they love me and the way they like empathize with my story, I just always tell them, I'm like, I hope that you have a gay son, because you would be such a great dad to a gay kid. Like, I didn't have a great dad to a gay, like to me being a gay kid. I had a great dad, but I couldn't go to him with my boy problems. I couldn't go to him and tell him like, hey dad, this guy got me twisted and I don't know what the fuck's happening. I'm jealous of his girlfriend and I'm mad all the fucking time and I don't know what's happening. You know, instead I just had to be like, I'm fine. I'm busy with school. It's fine. I'm busy with work. It's just life, you know? But to find that openness is something that I want to create with people, because I didn't have it. When I got my first apartment, my mom prayed over me and she said, you know, I pray that this house is going to be salvation for those who don't have it. And, you know, you're in an apartment alone, and I'm, you know, from the hookup site app. So I'm just like looking, and the only people awake at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning are tweakers. And you can tell right away because they just look skin and bones. Their lips are dry. They're just, you know, they're going through it. And they would show up, and some of them would just shoot up on my couch. And I would sit there and I would just let them talk. And some of them would just tell stories of such pain. And I would just be like, you can stay the night if you like, but just stay. I would stay awake to watch them, and they would just be awake because they couldn't sleep. But they would just talk, and they would just talk. And there was no sex involved. There was nothing sexual. There was no transaction. It was just talk, please. And I would light sage, and I would have like regulars. Like, they would hit me up at like 3-4 in the morning. Can I come over? I just don't feel good. Like, yeah, come over, but don't bring your stuff. If I do it here in my house, and then can I go over? Like, yeah, but don't do it in my home. Like, just come here if you need that like place. And I would cook food at like 3-4 in the morning, or like make teas, and it became like a little sanctuary. But again, like, if you're not taking care of yourself, those spirits, they hold on to you. And like, they would leave, and I would just lay down on my bed and be like, fuck, like, that guy held in for 36 years that he was molested as a teen. Like, that's crazy. I can't imagine holding on to that secret for that long. Or someone will come up and just be like, oh yeah, you know, my dad was an alcoholic and he beat my mom to death in front of me. And, you know, I had to go live with my grandma in Lancaster for a little bit. And it's like, and nobody like gave you a hug. Nobody said like, mijo, I'm sorry. And they would just sit there and cry. But because they were so high, their guard was down, and it was so open and free flowing. And that's kind of what I've been like. That's been my mission. Like, if you have a story and you're going to talk to me, I want you to say it without judgment. I'm not going to judge you. Like, I've been around the worst of the worst. I've heard the worst of the worst. And sometimes like people just need to talk, especially men. Like, I have a huge following of male friends who hit me up just to talk about what they're feeling or what they're going through. And it's weird because it feels like a lot of them have a lot of like, you know, pain in their childhood that nobody talks to you about. No one sits down with you and says, I'm sorry. Nobody sits down and says, you know, that's not supposed to happen to kids. Instead, they just say, you don't talk about it, and you're going to move on, and you're going to be better. If you don't think about it, you'll be better. And I see what that happens to people like that, because my mom was molested when she was little. So growing up, it was like, you can't go out. You can't go out with your friends. You can't do this. You can't do that. And you're just stuck in a room where she could watch you, because the outside world hurt her. So it's not going to, like, she's not going to give that chance to you. And you don't understand that as a kid. And I watch, like, you know, these people in my life, and I'm just like, wow, like, you need to let that out. and you need to grow. Just like, you got to just start letting it go and heal and go through that pain and cry. Like, it's okay. Boys can cry. You cry when you're born. It's what's natural, you know? And so, I don't know, it's kind of just been like my mission in the last couple of years, just giving people this chance to talk. And because I have so much like therapy in me, I can recognize certain signs and be like, oh, hey, you're suffering from something. This is what happens with it. And it's interesting because you do realize that this thing that I'm feeling inside of me, because I'm an emotional man, I'm a gay man, and then you have emotional men who are straight, but because of the machismo-ness of it all, that makes you gay. So they don't want to be anything like that. Or they were molested by somebody, and so they think that that's gay, and that's not a good thing. So like when people find out I'm gay, they're like, oh, you're cool, but you're not like one of those like other gay guys. I'm like, oh no, I'm that gay. Like, I dress up like a girl, I take it in the butt, like, I'm gay. And so like they're always like, oh, that's crazy. But like to see them just get comfortable around this idea of like something they feared for so long, and understand like, I'm just living this life with you. I'm just here trying to get through it day by day. And if I can take your hand and you can do it with me, then we got each other. And that's all we need in this world, is just that one person. So if any of you are out there, gay or just a crybaby straight man, if you're gay, there's resources out there. If you're struggling with that, find your resources and understand the world has said so many stories about our kind that the generation before us doesn't even understand it. And so when you tell somebody you're gay, or when you're ready to come out, you have to do it on your own time. You have to do it when you're ready. And your plan always has to be to tell whoever it is, your parents, your best friend, whoever you trust. But understand that the way it's been bottling inside of you for however many years, you can't expect someone to just kind of be okay with it right away. A lot of times the happy ending is that, yeah, you're going to say, Mom, I'm gay. And she's going to go, thank God, I don't have to deal with any bitches calling my house, you know? And that's very rare. But also understand, like, you're part of this lineage of pain. And you got to shed so many, like, eras and generations of hurt, because when you're coming out to yourself, you're coming out fucking fresh and raw. And this world would do anything to tear that baby seal, like that baby turtle up. So you got to protect him and them and just keep going. But always reach out. There's resources. There's, you know, the SoCal Club. There's the LGBT centers. There's Las Memorias in East LA. There's so much now. I wish when I was growing up, there were like places closer to home and not just West Hollywood or San Diego, or like, damn, like I got to take 5 buses just to go like be around my own kind. Like, it's really beautiful to see what this community has grown into. I just want to see this community heal now, because it's really easy to be like, oh, that's what gay is. Gay is this and I'm going to be that. And it's no, gay is you, and you do you. And whatever the fuck that means to you, you do it and you be happy, but you got to take care of that little kid inside of you. Because this world out there, it's filled with people that will take advantage of that little kid. And they're going to fuck it up every time. You're going to get alcohol, you're going to get fucked up, drugs. And learn how to just protect yourself, because a lot of us didn't get that chance. And it's interesting now to see that. Like, there's like a whole like upper echelon of gay. Like, hey, back in my day, we just used to jump in a stranger's car. And it's like, oh, sounds weird. Now I just go on like this app. But yeah, it's something that not everyone's equipped for. But when you find your tribe and you find the person who can help you, it makes a difference in your life. So if you ever feel like this is it, I'm just done, I've hit every avenue, no one loves me. No, that's not true. You just have been going down the wrong road. And sometimes you have to go in reverse a few times just to get back on the right street. So to anyone out there that's struggling, anyone out there that has feelings that they're not sure of, you know, reach out to somebody, because you never know who's having those same feelings. So, yeah.
Wait. One thing. Do you think now he can say, this is where you can find me?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about
yeah, close it out.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. You could do something like, you know, this is my, you could point to it, I'll put it in the video, I'll put it where you're
Okay. If anyone out there wants to get in contact with me, either just to talk or just, to laugh at my pictures, you can find me on Instagram. It's at IBRicky, letter I, letter B, Ricky, because that's who I be. You can find me on Instagram like that. It's the most common way to find me. I have like poetry and stuff too. So who knows what you're going to find, but you can find me there. And also I have Spread'em Ramen. It's my restaurant. It's fucking delicious. So check it out. It's underscore Spread'em underscore ramen. I'm Ricky, and this little thing is my story. This poem is one of the first poems I wrote and performed maybe about 2 years ago. It's inspired by a lot of those boys that don't know you can cry. So it's just a letter. It's called Hey Straight Boy. Hey straight boy, why are you hiding? Is it because you've been crying? Are you sad? Are you mad? If you're scared, then take my hand and let the world see that you're distraught, and let them see the fault in what you were taught. Just because you harness emotion, it doesn't mean you're broken or made wrong. Think of it like your beautiful lyrics with no song. You just haven't quite found where you belong. And you don't have to follow in your father's way. He's not like truly happy. It's all a display. He was told by his father, who was told by his father, who was told by his father, that real men don't cry. Instead, they possibly just drink Modelo's and mistreat their wives. They call her too much, or they call her dramatic. It's that machismo pride. It's afraid of mental health, and yet there's so much signs of that manic. Depression leads to aggression. Sometimes it's followed by a one-on-one session between you and his hand, or maybe about, while he reminds you that only maricones shed tears when they yelp. So he's following a pattern that was used to draw out emotion from both sons and daughters that they deem demonic. Later generations will call it histrionic. See, it's a disorder that's caused by abuse that's chronic. And I feel that it's ironic. See, these most emotional men make boys that are stoic, thinking that because they feel less, they're somewhat heroic. And it's the opposite, I think. See, as I stand before you and I speak, I see in you this strength. I mean, it's gonna break chains. I see in you an empath that will show no shame, because you can be freed from everything your dad done, everything passed down father unto son. See, please don't hide when you cry. When they ask you about those tears in your eyes, you stand tall and say, I'm fucking living this life, and that's why. This one is a piece I want to dedicate to my mom. It's called Blinding. I've heard it said that every teardrop is a memory purged, and staring at a broken reflection through puffy, swollen eyes, I can see my mother. And I can see the way she used to run her hands on my back when I would be laying on her. And she'd pray for me, that God would send angels to protect me. And then the memory falls. And now another one is being created. And it's the day that I yelled at her, I hate you and I wish you were my fucking mother. Not knowing if I really meant it or I just wanted her to hurt as bad as I did. I'm standing and I'm shaking. I'm suffocating on the words, I don't mean it. And before I can say it, I see my mother, and she is now purging a memory. And it's my grandmother holding a cigarette, staring at her, saying, you should have known better. You're trying to take my man, you selfish bitch. And 42, 38, 30, 25, 15, 10-year-old her has never let that tear fall. The shock holds it in her eye. And now I'm staring at her, shaking again, with a cigarette in her hand, and she says, good, I fucking hate you too, you little faggot. And 10, 15, 20, 30-year-old me still hasn't shed that tear and stays in my eye, blinding me from healing. So in my book, give it out for free if you find me on Instagram, but it tells 3 different stories. One, just who I am, the people that created me. than the person I became in church, hateful, angry. And it ends with this, it's called an unfinished essay about healing. There are moments I sit down with myself to reflect on the pain, the hurt, and all the darkness that I've ever known. And in those moments, it becomes overwhelmingly clear that I carry too much with me. I mourn the promises of relationships past and present. Hell, I stare into the eyes of the agreements that I've made with the broken versions of myself. But worst of all, I accept embracing hugs and tender touches from the Reaper, allowing him to seduce me to leave alongside him. And sometimes his offer, I'm not going to lie, is quite persuasive. I can leave it all behind. All the pain, all the guilt, all the shame. In exchange, I had a chance to be reborn into something that this world will accept. And I can slice the skin cocoon and reveal the butterfly I've always had within me. And sometimes this offer is so tremendously colossal in the front of my mind that I can't see anything beyond the shadow of death. And sometimes, even now, I can close my eyes and I can see the image of me in a coffin and my friends surrounded. And this rot from love they'll never be able to give me is inside of them, and it's causing them to decay. And this image is pain. It's all I've ever known. That's until I learned exactly what it was. See, it was the pain of generational trauma passed on to me at the time of my conception. It was the emotion my father was forced to hide in order to survive. It was the inability to love myself because my mother had never been given the chance. It was the addiction of my grandparents to drugs and excess. It was this narcissistic belief that everyone, everywhere was just judging me, talking ill behind my back, and this constant need to have to feed the invisible crowd. And once I began to strip that away from my soul, I was able to hear the laughter of my 5-year-old self. And I was able to hug the bullied 17-year-old version of myself, desperately praying for someone to tell him, it's going to be okay, Ricky. And I was back there with my 27-year-old self holding his hand as he cried on asphalt. You see, by saving these past versions of myself, I was able to fix the road the present me was on. And I fell to my knees and I thanked the universe for testing me so diligently. Like, I even talked to God for the first time since I had the blood and body of Christ at communion. And I realized something. See, in my blood was the same blood as his son, which, doesn't that make me a God in my own world? Don't I have the power to create light to balance the dark? Shit, I can create worlds with pens, paper, and just a little bit of imagination. I've made whole meals from every tree and plant and animal in the Garden of Eden. I have been reborn, I have been rebuilt, I have been healed, and while Sunday through Friday I may chase manifestations, I remind myself, on the seventh day, I'm gonna rest.